guys, welcome back to my channel. It is time for the July monthly reading wrap-up, and I hit a great variety of books this month, starting out with a suspense, moving on to a romance, sports fiction, and then wrapped it up with a literary suspense novel that is one of the most talked about books of the year. I bet you can guess which one. So it was a good reading month. I didn't have a single 5-star read, but it was pretty close. Now, starting off, while I was on my plane ride to and from Japan, I dug into Lisa Jewell's It Could Have Been Her. And this is a suspense, and Lisa always writes about family psychological dramas slash mysteries. And this was no different, but it did fall a bit flat for me. I absolutely adored Don't Let Him In, and None of This Is True, among others by Lisa Jewell. She is truly one of my favorite mystery novelists, but this one fell a little bit flat. So in It Could Have Been Her, we're following a woman, Jane Trevally, who's in her mid-50s. She has been married, I think, 3 times, maybe 4 times. She's divorced now and living alone in the countryside in England with her 3 beloved dogs. Well, she comes along in the forest, a stray white dog, clearly looking for its owner, and she eventually ties that dog back to a house where she ran across a dangerous situation decades ago when she was in her 20s and thought that could have been the last day of her life if she hadn't escaped that situation. So she's a bit suspicious of this house, and there is a different owner to the house now named Stuart, and he's a pretty off the wall guy, kind of creepy. She doesn't know what his deal is, but ultimately Jane becomes an amateur sleuth and tries to put together the pieces to figure out this family situation and find a missing teenage girl. So the book moves back and forth between present day and 10 to 15 years ago. And so you get the POVs of Jane and Stuart, the current homeowner. And the family history that Jane unravels in this house is wild and dangerous and creepy. But I have to say, I didn't fall in love with Jane as the main character. I didn't particularly find her that likable. And so I wasn't rooting for any single character in this book. So I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars. Like I said, I have a couple other favorites from Lisa Jewell, and I was just on the edge of my seat with those books, but I can't say the same for It Could Have Been Her. Next on my list for July was probably my easiest and most enjoyable read of the month, and this is the romance novel Dolly All the Time by Annabelle Monaghan. Now, if you got through reading Our Perfect Storm, which is on my bookshelf there, and you're looking for a nice, easy breezy beach read for the summer, Dolly All the Time definitely fits the bill. And if you look at Goodreads or any other ratings online, you'll see this book is very highly rated. So Dolly All the Time is set in a charming small town in Rhode Island, and Dolly is a single mom and a kindergarten teacher who has come home for the summer from Boston to help out her dad and her adult disabled brother after a minor house fire. Now, Dolly doesn't come from a lot of money, and in fact, she is just scraping by. So she is working at her dad's fish house and doing other part-time jobs. And in the meantime, main character Stuart is on the path to become the CEO of his family's company and has millions of dollars on hand. Well, he's not the best at taking care of himself and doing the little normal things that most people do, such as knowing how to scramble your eggs or fix a tire. So he runs into trouble and pops a tire one day, and here comes Dolly on her bicycle, and she fixes his tire for him. Well, he has just gone through a PR nightmare because his girlfriend just very publicly cheated on him and broke up with him. And this is damaging his image of being the reliable and confident man ready to take over as CEO. So he makes a proposition to Dolly and asks her after she fixes his tire, "Will you be my fake girlfriend for the rest of the summer? And I'll offer you a large sum of money," which Dolly negotiates quite well to possibly cover some of those house damages at her father's home. Now, something that always makes for a great romance novel is the banter between the female and male leads. And it sure is there in this book, Dolly All the Time, but also the bestie friendship. And the bestie in this book is Naomi, and Dolly and Naomi are always giggling about something. And Naomi is just going crazy over this relationship. Even though she knows it's a fake relationship, she's all the time, oh my God, OMG, tell me all about it. So I loved the OMG, tell me everything vibes of this friendship between the two women, but also the romantic buildup between Stuart and Dolly was perfectly timed, perfect amount of spice, not too spicy in this book. And the community dynamic was really good in this small town as well. There was an appropriate conflict that I knew was coming towards the end of the book, but the way that Stewart handled that conflict kind of gave me the ick, and that was the only thing that detracted from this story. So there were probably about 60, 70 pages where I'm like, I don't really like this relationship, particularly this guy. So overall, my rating of this story, because I loved the vast majority of it, is 4.5. And I highly, highly recommend this as a summer read. So put this on your summer TBR. So the rest of the month of July was filled with two angry women. And one of the angry women is Carrie from Carrie, Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Now, Taylor Jenkins Reid is a favorite author of mine and many of you out there as well. But this one is quite different. It's basically a sports fictional documentary following Carrie Soto, who is now 37 years old. She's been retired from the tennis game for the past 5 years. But there is a competitor, Nikki Chan, who is threatening to surpass her 20 major Grand Slam final titles record. And she can't let that happen. So she is training her butt off to get back into the game and get into the professional tennis circuit again to capture at least one more Grand Slam. Nikki is near the end of her career as well. So Carrie is crossing her fingers. If I can just get one more, I'll keep that record. Now, the reason that I said Carrie is an angry woman is because she was not very likable in her career when she won those 20 Grand Slams. She was number one in the world for many years, but she did not cater to her fans. She kept to herself. And so when she announces she's going to come back 5 years into retirement, the sportscasters are saying the bitch is back. And she really is aggressive and focuses on herself. Her number one goal is to win, win, win at the cost of everything else, including relationships in her life. There really is a big focus, two big focuses. One, definitely the training and all the tournaments. If you are not a tennis fan, I'm not sure if this book is for you. I am a huge tennis fan, so this was really great. But the other focus, the second focus, is on the relationship between her father, Javier, who is a former tennis star, and Carrie herself. And they have gone through struggles. She fired him as her coach when she was first winning the big titles and went on to a different coach for many years. Well, coming out of retirement, dad is her coach again. So there's a relationship to rebuild, and it's a great one. I love the dynamic between Carrie and Javier. And then also, there's a little bit of a romantic side story, but it's not the main focus of this book. So, again, very heavy into sports, as it should be. And this is really a departure from Taylor Jenkins Reid's romance novels. I really enjoyed her earlier novels like After I Do and One True Loves. And this one wasn't quite my favorite, but I still had a good time. Overall, I give Carrie Soto is Back 3.5 stars. And rounding out the month of July with one more angry woman is Natalie from Yesteryear by Carol Claire Burke. In Yesteryear, we're following Natalie Heller Mills, who has had quite the life story. She grew up as a good Christian girl, taught how to be a good wife, a good mother, and a good Christian in general. And her goal was to have the traditional American dream, which was to get married and have a whole bunch of kids. Well, life doesn't always go according to plan. While she does get married and does start having children, there are some intricacies to her life that didn't go as she planned. So she is now a social media influencer with millions of followers on Instagram and tries to portray this idyllic life in Idaho, in the rolling hills, in fact, between two mountains on her family farm, her sweet little farm, she calls it, where she says, "Hello, ladies," to the chickens each morning, and she makes her sourdough bread from scratch and does all sorts of fun projects with the kids on the farm. Well, is that really reality? You'll have to read. But one morning, she is thrust back in time to 1855 and she wakes up to a freezing cold house because there's no heat in the house. And she's wondering, where the hell am I? And her husband, Caleb, and some of her children look really familiar, but there's something not quite right. So Natalie's wondering, what is going on? Am I in a reality show right now? Am I truly time traveling? She's very confused, as are we as we're reading along. So the book goes back and forth between present day and actually the history leading up from Natalie's childhood to her present day marriage and social media stardom to 1855, where she's stuck in this same house that she's currently living in, but very rustic and having to make food from scratch with two or three ingredients, suffering through the cold, and not being able to venture into the woods. She's basically trapped in this house. So it's a mystery, and you're wondering, is she going to make it back from 1855? But more importantly, this book just touches on so many big topics. So I felt like I was learning a lot from this book between the patriarchy and feminism and motherhood. Motherhood really hit home with me because it is definitely not a fairy tale, definitely not easy. So I did really appreciate some of Natalie's opinions, even though she was quite, at times, a cruel human being, and the means to an end were not something that I would recommend following in your own lifestyle. You'll know what I mean. And check out the scene where there's a turkey baster and cereal bowl. Hilarious, but also a little bit disturbing. So, this was such a departure from my normal romance and thriller novels. I mean, this was a suspense in one way, but it's hard to put it into a single category. So, this book, along with Into the Blue, are the most talked about books in 2026, in my opinion. And I wasn't a huge fan of Into the Blue. I am a huge fan of this book. It did take me a little bit to get into this book, to get into the setting, but I loved this female main character, crazy as she is. And the conclusion of this book will really knock your socks off. So, my final rating for Yesteryear is 4.5 stars. And this was a banger of a book. So, make sure you get this on your TBR. Now, looking ahead to the month of August, I've got some good ones on my list. In fact, there's a couple being delivered to my doorstep today. Strangers by Belle Burden, and this is a memoir on marriage and divorce. And I've heard so many good things about this book, so I'm looking forward to that. And then the second book is called The Calamity Club by Catherine Stockett. And Catherine Stockett is the author of The Help, if you remember that book about maids or housekeepers. And I can't remember what the time period was, but that book was eye opening and also hilarious and made into a movie probably more than a decade ago. Very successful, both as a book and in the theaters. So I am really looking forward to reading The Calamity Club. And this is set during the Depression and follows a group of women trying to keep it all together during the Depression. And it sounds like a really good read, highly rated on Goodreads. So, Those two books, Strangers and The Calamity Club, are high on my list, but also I'm wondering if I should get back into these two books. Phoebe Berman's Gonna Lose It and Best Offer Wins. The reason I stopped reading these in July was that I just didn't connect with Phoebe in this book. And I'm in my 40s, she's in her 20s, she's a virgin. We'll end that conversation there. But I didn't really connect with her that much, and she just seemed a little ditzy and far too anxious for my liking. So tell me, is this worth getting back into? Because I was 80 pages in and stopped this. So I'm just not sure if I'm loving it. But Best Offer Wins by Marissa Cascino. This is about another angry woman, and I just got through Yesteryear, and Carrie Soto is back, and I'm not sure if I am ready for those vibes still. And I did get about 25-30 pages into this one last month too, but Best Offer Wins is about a woman and her husband in Washington, D.C., and the housing market is hot. So they keep getting outbid and they're stuck in this tiny home. So she's being crafty, doing everything she can to secure a home. But it sounds like things get really dicey in this book. I don't know if there is any murder involved, but I just don't think I'm ready for those vibes, being aggressive just to find a home. So tell me, Best Offer Wins. Phoebe Berman's Gonna Lose It. Should I get back into either of these this month of August? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for joining me for this July monthly reading wrap up, and I hope you are enjoying lots of good books this summer. Can't wait to see you in the next video. Bye.